Always. Let's see here. Hold on.
Hey, we had a little bit of an internet connection issue. I think maybe again on your side, Christian, it was cutting out. No big deal, buddy. I'm in here. You're looking good now. This is Chris Vaca. Sorry, guys. That was nothing I could do there. It literally just dropped me in. So, Christian, what's up, though, my man?
Man, not too much, Chris. Just another week almost in the books here for us. And, you know, we're getting right along. I mean, we had an interesting week one of college football, to say the least there.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, long weekend for football, which was kind of great. But, man, it seems like it goes by pretty quick, dude. It goes by fast, and then here we are midweek, and we got a game, I think, Friday night already, Illinois and at Kansas. You know what I mean? We're not that far around the corner starting up week 2, so I'm pretty pumped up for that, sir. But yeah, other than that, Christian, what's up, man? What are we talking about? Looks like we're getting into some week 2 previews.
Yeah, Chris. So we'll kind of start off here. We've got Baylor versus Utah previewing, Chris. I'll kind of go first here a little bit. So, you know, Chris, Baylor's coming off a 42-31 loss to Texas State. And also, to make matters worse, they lost starting quarterback Blake Shapen for the next few weeks, at least. They're going to have to turn it over to Mississippi State transfer Sawyer Robinson, who had 113 yards and 2 turnovers in relief duty. And the Bears on defense gave up 450 yards and allowed Texas State to dominate them to the tune of 28-14 at halftime. So, you know, that's got to kind of be pretty tough if you're the Baylor man there.
Yeah.
You know, Chris, I don't think it really matters, and you'll kind of touch on this here in a bit, who Utah trots out there at quarterback to play him. I don't think Baylor's probably going to be able to stop him. I'll say this to summarize this for Baylor. It surprises me that a Dave Aranda-led team, you know, by the way, speaking of Dave Aranda, he was largely considered to be one of the, you know, best coaches in college, you know, one of the hottest up-and-coming coaches in college football a few years back. You know, it surprises me that the last couple of years, I mean, last year they went 6-7, and they started this year off with a big-time upset loss. I mean, it's just surprising how quick a couple-year difference can make.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you're the Baylor man right now, you're in a critical state. That was a tough loss to Texas State, which they were never even in that game. I mean, Texas State held the lead from the beginning and pretty much kicked the shit out of them the entire game. But yeah, here we are, Utah. You talked about it, Christian. You touched base about Cam Rising. Again, it's up in the air. It sounds like it's a game time decision. I was looking into that this morning, and you know they're going to play that same game with him. I know he's practicing, but if you're really Utah right now, after what you saw against Florida last week, I don't know. I mean, do you really need to play him against Baylor? I don't think so. So, yeah, and if they do, if Cam Rising doesn't go, guys, they're going to play Bryson Barnes. He was 12 of 28 for 159 yards and a touchdown last week. Looked pretty damn good. And they brought in Nate Johnson. That kid can run the ball out of the QB position. He was only, I think, 3 for 4 throwing the ball for like maybe 10 yards, but he had 6 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. He's kind of a change of pace quarterback. I mean, he's an athlete back there. It seemed to work really well for Utah in that game. Utah pretty much handled Florida for the most of that game. Sorry, Florida man there, but it really was. I think Utah going forward here in this game, though, you know, they're going on the road here, which, okay, but Utah's a physical team. They've won the Pac-12 the last 2 years. People seem to forget about that. I think people wrote them off this year. You know, keep it simple if you're Utah. Run the ball, rely on that defense. You know, Baylor's going to want to probably throw the ball. I don't think Baylor's going to have a lot of success in this game, Christian, running the ball against Utah. Florida sure as shit didn't with 13 yards in that game, which is just amazing to me. Florida had that many yards rushing, especially after last year's, you know, production on the offensive side of the ball for Florida. But saying that, Christian, what's your prediction here? Or if you have anything to add here, man? I really, truly think you're probably on the same page as me here as far as Utah.
Yeah, I think, we've got people jumping into the chat here. I think they're exactly right. I think Utah is going to win this one big. I mean, my prediction on this one, I've got Utah 35, Baylor 14. What about you, Chris?
I'm really close with you. Like I said, we don't consult before the show starts about predictions or much of anything. To be honest with you, Christian really and I don't get along after the show, even if we get along half the time on the show. No, I got Utah 27, Baylor 14. I don't see a world, and it really doesn't have anything to do with Baylor. Even it does have something to do with Baylor losing last week, Christian, but Utah just impressed the shit out of me with their backup quarterbacks, both of them, against a Florida team that we were told was much more improved this year. So I just think Utah's the better team. They're the more physical team. We know how these Big 12 defenses play.
Yeah, Chris, you're not wrong. Dan says, give me Utah easily, 31-14. Agree with you there.
Absolutely.
So probably the biggest game this weekend, next to Texas, Bama, I would say Nebraska versus Colorado. Chris, what are your thoughts about Colorado?
I think anybody that follows the show knows, we've had to come on here and admit that we're wrong about Colorado, week one anyway. Yep. We did that. I'm not going to talk about that part of it. But what I will talk about was offensively, they looked elite. 510 yards by Shedeur Sanders, 4 touchdowns. Damn near had like a 90% completion percentage. I mean, it was amazing. Okay, cool. But again, on the opposite side of that, if we're going to touch on TCU for just a second, was I more impressed about Colorado's offense or Colorado as a whole, or was I more let down or disappointed in TCU as a whole? I would say TCU on my end, and that's not an excuse. It just TCU looked flat, didn't care. They were at home. Defense was absolutely atrocious. I don't know. But going forward here, which is where we're headed with this, Colorado against Nebraska, in my opinion, if they want to, I think they obviously have a chance, and we'll get to our predictions here, but they're going to have to be able to run the ball a little bit better, I think. Nebraska's defense looked really good against Minnesota. Now, we don't know what Minnesota is offensively or that much really defensively. We don't know that, but I think that Colorado even knows that. Deion talked about it this week already. We're going to have to be able to run the football. We can't be throwing for 500 yards a game and chucking it around the field. I think they can do that. But it's Nebraska, I think, is a little bit more physical team than TCU. Let's just throw that out there. If you disagree with me, feel free to drop it in the comments. My big thing is also with Colorado. I love Travis Hunter, Christian. We talk about him. He's all over the internet playing both ways, 120 some odd snaps. They can't be doing that the rest of the year. We've touched on this a couple times, Christian. I think you agree. You're going to get the kid killed. He's an amazing athlete, but Colorado needs him. They need him a lot for this season upcoming. Here's my other thing. Defense, I touched on it. I think this is the big thing if you're Colorado and you're pulling for Colorado in this game. They gave up well over 500 yards in that game against TCU. And TCU probably could have ran the ball a hell of a lot more than what they did, especially in the fourth quarter there. They almost gave up 300 on the ground. Nebraska's predominantly, from what we've seen after a small sample size, is a running team. Whether it's Jeff Sims, they're going to give obviously Christian, you're going to touch on Nebraska here, but Gaver, we got a ton of running backs back there. So my case for Colorado is I think that the defensive side of the ball, they're going to have to be better. Deion talked about it for this game. I think Nebraska's, obviously defensively is better than TCU, but they're going to have to do something here to shore this up a little bit. Nebraska's going to be a more physical team. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you're definitely not wrong about that. Speaking about Nebraska, hopefully I can do the Nebraska man proud right here, because that game was tough to watch, right? I mean, Nebraska, Minnesota, Nebraska's offense looked lost at times. I mean, it just did. I mean, the offense struggled to get much going and looked out of rhythm all night. I mean, Sims had 3 turnovers. On his own right. Nebraska had 4 total turnovers. I think the big thing from this too is Minnesota has a potential top 25 defense. I mean, last year they were top 10. They looked pretty good again and were able to take advantage of turnovers all night long. So that might continue, right? Sims also had 91 yards on 19 carries, which I'd like to see to go more of the running backs, obviously. I'd like the running backs to be more involved here. They got to keep Sims healthy. The biggest takeaway that I have from Sims in this performance was I think he showed you exactly what he showed you at Georgia Tech, which was a big, strong kid who can run the ball 19, 20 times, might get banged up from doing that, has a great arm and can make just about all the throws you want him to make, but is interception prone, is decision making prone. And when you get in one of those games where you got to have it, can he win you the game by throwing the ball? That's my biggest question that I have about Jeff Sims, that I need to see cleaned up if you're going to win a lot of games in the Big Ten or even against Colorado. Colorado's defense, though, I will say this, they should be much easier to run the ball on. I personally believe TCU, they weren't as physical, Chris. They weren't as physical on both sides of the ball as I initially had believed.
No.
That could be an advantage right there against or for Nebraska. Their defense, on the other hand, Chris, they looked lights out. But the thing with that is it's a question mark of an offense that Minnesota was trotting out there. What I mean by that is at the end of the year, when we look back at Minnesota's offense, where are they going to be at in the grand scheme of things? Was Nebraska's defense that much better? And I will say this, they did look improved, especially in open space and making tackles. But are they elite? Are they lights? Or are they, what I'm saying? Like, is Minnesota's offense that good to where you can say Nebraska's defense is elite yet? And I don't know. I don't have a big enough sample size for that. I say all this really because Nebraska runs that 3-3-5 defense, same as TCU. But if Colorado doesn't come correct, or Nebraska doesn't make some of those changes, which I think they'll make coming into this game, it's going to be a long day for the Skurs, dude. It just is. And I'm gonna kind of add this to it. I think this is a kind of a long rant here, but literally, I think it's impossible to play any worse on defense than what TCU did against Colorado. Did they? I'm trying to think back in my head. I don't even know if they stopped Colorado. They might have maybe made them punt once, if that.
Yeah, I think there was one turnover by Colorado, and that was pretty much it in that game. For as Colorado mistakes offensively, they didn't make any. And is that Colorado's offense, Christian, or is it just TCU's defense is just that bad?
I think it was a combination of both. Honestly, I think it was a little bit of both. I think I was a little too high on TCU. I will say that, and I was a little too low on Colorado. That's the way, and I know we both have kind of said that. I think we were both a little bit too high on TCU and too low on Colorado. Now, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? It's a long season yet. I'm not saying that we're 100% wrong yet, but I will say this: that team that took the field in TCU, and the linebacker talked about it last two times they've been on the field, they've gotten that defense has been the laughingstock of college football. So for me, I was also like to say I was a little higher on Nebraska, I think, before I saw the Minnesota game, and now I'm kind of not downgrading Nebraska a whole lot, but I'm looking at this with a lot more question marks, especially on the offensive side of the ball, because I was watching something today, and I think it was the Doc Diagnosis, and he talks about this. One of the things he said was they asked him, he stares down his reads a little too much, and the co-host said, "Hey, is this something that we can?" we can change, and he said, and that's, and I agree with him. He said, no, that's not really something you can change in a week. That's something that takes a long time to be able to change. And it's almost ingrained, right? It's a comfortability thing where you got to know an offense, you got to play in it. You can't stare it down. You got to have that comfortability to look over here, right? And then at the last second, know what's going on over there to be able to make that throw. And that's what's so tough. And a week already into the season, and we're already talking about making that as a correction. That's kind of a tough thing, and I don't know. That's the big thing. I don't know if Sims is going to be able to really do that, especially in this week. Maybe if it's something they put the emphasis on a couple weeks, maybe we can see it cleaned up a little bit. But it doesn't really get much easier than that, right? Chris, I'm going to kind of make my prediction here for this game. Yeah. I'm going to go Nebraska 24. Colorado 28.
Yeah. That's tough to hear, you guys know this, man. I've been a Nebraska fan my entire life. I grew up here, born and raised. I'm from a small town, less than 100 people. Making a prediction for this game has been tough for me. I didn't say anything after the TCU game because people are already talking about this game. But, it just pisses me off, Christian. It just does. And I'm not yelling at you. I'm not yelling directly at anybody in the chat. I'm not directly yelling at anybody on YouTube other than the Nebraska football team right now. But this shit fucking offends me that I have to take an overhyped Colorado team, which they are overhyped right now. Yes, they beat a TCU team that wasn't as good as everybody thought they were. Great. Here's your flowers. But where I'm pissed off about, it's not Colorado on this game. It's the fact that my fucking team can't get out of their own way for the last 10 years playing football. The penalties, the piss poor decision making from the quarterback play. This has been year in and year out for Nebraska. Clock management, crucial moments, making terrible throws, and goddamn turnovers, Christian. I'm sick of it as a Nebraska fan. I really am. They did it against Minnesota. They did it under the Scott Frost era. They did it under the Mike Riley era. Hell, they even did it at the end of the Bo Pelini era, man. It's just like every fucking time that we're going to be relevant, we're going to get back to good things, and it's the same shit recycled every freaking time, man. And you know what, man? We're talking predictions. This was really hard for me because, like I said, I don't love Colorado. There were our rivals back in the 90s when I was a little kid. But hats off to Colorado in the TCU victory. But, man, I'm looking at this as a realist, and I got to look at this from an outsider perspective and not get emotionally involved like I just did there. Colorado 30, Nebraska 28, man. I mean, it's tough for me to say, but give me Colorado in this game because Nebraska is yet to prove to me for 10 years that they can win a close game and not piss it down their leg. I apologize there for going off a little bit, man, but it's just, it is what it is, man.
Yeah, Chris, and I mean, one thing I kind of wanted to add too, and you're not wrong, and you can tell. I mean, when you're passionate about a team, like you are, and we all are here. We all have our teams that we want, we root for, and we cheer for, and we're happy when they win, and we're mad as hell when they lose. The thing I kind of looked at with this was it's a lose-lose situation. I mean, honestly, for us, kind of picking this, I feel like it's a lose-lose situation because picking Colorado, kind of gives all the Colorado and Dion, hype bus the ability to come back and say, well, you didn't believe in us then. Why are you going to jump on the train now, right? And then it also kind of pisses off a lot of the Nebraska fan base that says it's one game and you're already downgrading us. And, I'm going to say this. Me and Chris have a strategy here. There's an important reason as to why we picked them to win this game. May not necessarily align with what we truly believe in our heart of hearts, right? And what we know, just by watching both these teams play. I'll tell you this. I mean, we've both bet on this game, and there's a very good reason is that, right? Sometimes you bet on teams, they lose. By God, we bet on fucking Colorado to win, so let's go. Last time I made a bet with somebody, it cost me $500, and it lost my interest in Brian Kelly. I'll put it that way. So
I needed that after my rant, man. And you're not wrong. But I'm not taking this because I think Colorado is a far superior team than Nebraska right now. I don't. It's just what I've seen in Nebraska year in and year out, Christian. And that's you got to go by the eye test. You throw the emotions out the window, and Colorado did look elite on offense. Nebraska did look really good against a Minnesota team that we really don't know who they are, but we also could be said about TCU. But again, we're going into Colorado if you're the Nebraska man, and you got to step it up. If Nebraska, I think, is going to play more physical, I don't think this game is going to get into the 40s. I hope Nebraska comes out there and plays super physical ball and keep the goddamn ball out of Shedeur Sanders' hands. I hope that's the game plan going forward. But then again, I don't know how much can you trust Jeff Sims?
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, we learned, if one thing I did learn from that Chandler Morris kid for TCU, if you stare down your routes, Colorado will absolutely take advantage of that. Absolutely. I mean, they were doing it all day. So, and that's the unfortunate side of it is, can they get back to running the football, something TCU was able to do all game long, and can they move it forward and be able to get something going in the passing game? I personally think, because after this they kind of they have a cupcake game, don't they? If I'm not mistaken, Nebraska does.
Yeah, they got two.
So
of them. They got Northern Illinois and La Tech, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, so they got a couple. They got a couple give me games, and I think that those are the games that you really focus on Jeff Sims maybe as a passer. This is one of those games you run the fucking football. I know I said I know I said, hey, he can't run 19 times or whatever have you. In a game like this, maybe that's what you got to do. Maybe you got to run the ball 20 times with Sims. Maybe, you got to try to keep it on the ground and do what you got to do. But just figure out a way to win. Figure out a way to move the ball. If you get inside of the 10-yard line, don't throw it. For the love of God, don't throw it. Just run it.
Tell TCU that. I'm sure they wish they would have done the same. But hats off again to Colorado. Christian, Colorado, if they want to win, they need to shore up the defense a little bit. Like I said, keep doing what you're doing on offense. Get the ball to your playmakers. They got a ton of them, especially on the outside.
Absolutely. Well, NC State and Notre Dame playing this weekend, Chris. Who just go ahead and kind of run me down here. What you think about Notre Dame?
Yeah, no, I mean, let's be honest. Notre Dame, we got a little more of a sample size than most teams, right? They played 2 games now. They played the week 0, the week 1 game. They're 7.5-point favorites right now, which kind of surprises me a little bit. I thought it'd be more than that currently, but Sam Hartman looks great. Now, the other side of that, who the hell have they played, right? I mean, they played Navy and I think Tennessee State, and he didn't play a ton in the Tennessee State game, nor should have he. Notre Dame so far this year has done what Notre Dame should. If you're a Notre Dame fan, this is what you wanted. Blow out both these teams, and they have done that. The offense is averaging over 500 yards right now per game, which is pretty impressive. Yes, I know it's Navy and Tennessee State. I get all of that. I will say this about Notre Dame, though. They got Ohio State here in a couple weeks. To me, it looks like they're ready to pound the goddamn football right down Ohio State's throat, and I love every fucking second of it because that's what Michigan does. But that's a take for another day. Christian, it's hard to get, because this Notre Dame really hasn't played anybody. It's hard to say anything bad about them. They've done what they've needed to. I will say, though, Sam Hartman and the running game has looked really good for Notre Dame. It looks like Notre Dame definitely has a true quarterback. Finally, we've been saying that for years. I think Sam Hartman's a damn good quarterback.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all on that, right? Notre Dame's finally found their signal caller, that they've been lacking for a while back there. About NC State, though, they beat UConn 24-14 last week. And this is going to be, obviously, you touched on it, Chris. This is going to be that first real test that Notre Dame's going to see all year.
100%.
I mean, they could be perceived any kind of competition, I would say, right? I mean, NC State has Virginia transfer quarterback Brennan Armstrong, who put up 155 yards, and he also ran for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game, which probably is going to be really tough to run for that kind of yardage, I would imagine, on a stout Notre Dame front seven. I really wanted to see more from Armstrong in that passing game and what should have been a give-me game for him.
I agree.
I mean, the Wolfpack's defense was all right, as they held the Huskies to 273 yards and 14 points, but Sam Hartman and co, man, I mean, they were going to pick them apart in this one, I got a feeling. For NC State to have a shot in this one, Chris, I mean, they're going to have to be able to get Armstrong going really early and limit the damage on defense. That's kind of the way I look at it. Again, I'll let you go first here on the final score prediction.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I'll make the case for a little bit for the NC State, man. Is that you're right? They're going to have Hartman's going to have to turn the ball over. I think NC State's going to have to get up early. Notre Dame just looks really good. NC State did not look good against, in my opinion, not a very good UConn team last week. But my predictions here, I think Notre Dame does what they do. I think they close this one out 34-17. Give me Notre Dame in this game. They easily cover the 7.5-point spread.
Man, we're right there almost. I got Notre Dame 27, NC State 17.
Okay, we're good. We're starting to dial it in a little bit.
We're starting to dial it in. I mean, we're within a touchdown here, right? So
absolutely
good shit there. Good shit. A little Ole Miss, Tulane. Chris, this is a game we kind of had on the outskirts here, looking at it.
Not talked about enough.
It's definitely not, dude. It's not talked about. It's just kind of one of those, it's Ole Miss, Tulane. But let me tell you about Tulane for a second here.
Let's go.
Tulane was the Cinderella team last year, right, as they beat USC in the Cotton Bowl.
Say that again.
They beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. Quarterback Michael Pratt looked good, really good against South Alabama. Now it's South Alabama, but he still went 14 of 15 for 294 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Jesus, is that like what 25 yards of completion on 50?
Yeah, he had more touchdowns than he did incompletions in a 37-17 victory. It's at this game, by the way, is at Tulane.
Yep.
If anybody was wondering, which you don't see that often. And also, here's another good stat for you, Chris. Tulane's defense forced 5 turnovers in this game. 5 turnovers. Now, I get it, South Alabama, but anytime you can force 5 turnovers and you can put up 4 touchdowns against anybody, who's at the FBS level of college football, you're doing something right. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, South Alabama, they're in that Sun Belt conference over there. It's not always the easiest conference to go up against.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? Willie Fritz and the Green Wave have experience beating top 25 teams with electric offenses and soft defenses recently. So I'm gonna come back to my prediction here in just a second, but I'm gonna kick it back to you, Chris, and kind of get your take here on Ole Miss.
Yeah, here I'll try to make the case here for the Ole Miss man right here. We don't talk about them near enough. I like Lane Kiffin, but Christian, what's Lane Kiffin's biggest win in his time at Ole Miss? Has he got like a big win? I mean, since he's been there, I think an Outback Bowl he beat somebody. I can't even think of what team it was, but I mean, he hasn't knocked off the Alabama or the LSU or obviously Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
this might be one of his biggest games. Is where I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, he's come close. You know what I mean, to beating Bama, I think, but he needs something. I mean, he's got to stay unscathed, like you said. Not to steal your thunder, but yeah, he needs something.
Yeah, no, and that's why I wanted to throw that question to you, because I think it's kind of an interesting question. I think he gets a lot of hype as this great coach, and I don't think Lane Kiffin's a bad coach. That's not what I'm saying. But my big thing is, last week they rolled Mercer. Isn't that a Georgia team?
You could definitely describe it as that, yeah.
Okay, 73-7. I'm not going to put too much on that. They did put over like almost 700 yards of total offense against Mercer. So it is what it is. But the big question with me, all offseason was, who the hell is going to be their quarterback, right? They got Spencer Sanders, Jackson Dart, and they had like a slew of quarterbacks back there. One of those guys should have went to Florida. Florida should have picked up one of those. Sorry, Graham Cracker, but that's just what I'm saying. Here's the thing. Ole Miss in this game against Tulane. Tulane's proven they can beat a Power 5 school, a top-tier one, what they did last year in the bowl game, right? I know it's this year, but Tulane returned a lot of people, including Michael Pratt. I think Ole Miss, it's great that Jackson Dart had a great game against a bad team. We don't talk about this kid enough. Quinshon Judkins, dude. This kid, he led the SEC in rushing as a true freshman last year. This kid's awesome. I hope they plan on running the ball with him. I like him a lot. He's going to be an NFL back here in a couple of years. He's a stud. I don't want them to get one-dimensional in this game and just try to think they got to chuck the ball over the field is where I'm getting at. I know Lane Kiffin, he likes to gamble. He's a little crazy. Sometimes he gets in interviews. It looks like he just did a line of coke. I mean, I love the guy to death. He's funny as shit. But, Christian, I want to know your prediction on this game. Ole Miss at Tulane.
Oh, man. I don't talk about it enough, but who called the Duke Clemson
that would be
upset?
You. You did. I said it was going to be within 3 points. You called it. You called it.
I don't know again, if they're going to upset them, but I'm going to go with it. My final score prediction: Tulane 38, Ole Miss 35.
Wow, bold take here. Bold take. Bold take, Christian. No, you were right, man. You got a lot of people chiming in after that video about, oh, shit. You know what I mean? It wasn't that Duke just barely won, by the way. They kicked the shit out of Clemson. I mean, that was an ass whooping. My prediction here, though, I'm going the opposite way. Give Tulane credit. I know this game is going to be super, super close. I think the spread is 7, Ole Miss, but I actually think this game is super close. Give me Ole Miss, though. I believe in Ole Miss this year a little bit. Give final 34-30 in a tight one coming down to the wire. Give me Ole Miss. But no, Tulane could run the table if they lose this game, and we're going to find them up there in the top 15, Christian. They're a very good team. They're not just some off, group of 5 team for sure.
Yeah, Chris, one thing that kind of, I think we did a hot take sometime in the offseason that Ole Miss could lose to Tulane.
Yeah.
And somehow turn around and beat, like a Bama or a Georgia or something like that.
Yep.
And that really wouldn't surprise me. Again, that would not surprise me for Ole Miss to come out and do something like that, because I think Ole Miss is going to get better throughout the year. Like most teams do. I think last year they kind of imploded. This year I think they're going to get better. Go ahead.
You remember last year they started off 7-0 before they played Bama, and then they lost 5 out of their last 6 or 4 out of their last 5.
Ole Miss,
it wasn't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think wasn't it something like that last year where they had this crazy hot start, Christian?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, it was something like that where they started. I know they started off 7-0, and then they lost I think they only won 1 game the rest of the year.
Right. So I'm with you. Like I said, you're right. You're 100% right on this. Ole Miss is going to be a good team. I had them. I still have them in my rankings in the top 25 right now. I think Ole Miss is going to be a good team. I just think Tulane is a good team also because they proved it last year. They proved that they beat a Caleb Williams Heisman Trophy winning team in Lincoln Riley, and that's a story for another day. But yeah, I do. I think this game is so overlooked this weekend. That was why I dropped it in our community quiz or poll this morning. So
yeah, I mean you're definitely not wrong. But switching gears here a little bit, Chris, Texas A&M versus Miami. What do you think about the Hurricanes?
What do I think about the old Hurricanes? I tell you what, Miami is a team, Christian. They're 4-point dogs at home, which is kind of surprising to me after the way they looked last week. Is Tyler Van Dyke the answer? I think so. I think he looked good so far this year. In one game, obviously, guys, he was 17-22 for 201 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They're going to obviously have to play better than that, though. I think he's going to have to complete some passes, some big throws. I watched that whole game. Miami pretty much dominated that from start to finish against Miami, Ohio. I mean, and there was a big rivalry thing about who's the best Miami team. It was stupid. It was like, why are we even having this conversation while I was watching the show or watching the game live? But if I'm Miami, you got to be able to run the football. They have one of our not backups, but a kid that played with us last year at Nebraska, AJ Allen. They got literally a 5-headed monster over there at Miami, Christian. They got the Paris Jr. kid. I think he had 90 yards rushing at TD. They got Fletcher. He had 9 for 76. They had AJ Allen, I think, had 50 yards, and another kid had about 40. They rotate backs like crazy there. I would stay with that, and I know A&M's defense I think is really, really good. That's where, to me, it comes down to Van Dyke, though. Can he make these big throws on 3rd and long to give Miami a chance in this game? I'm not saying Miami's a bad team, but this is a game to me that is between 2 teams last year that completely choked, in my opinion, as far as what everybody thought they were going to be at the end of the year last year. This is kind of one of these point and laugh games. If one of these loses, I don't want to say your season is done type of shit, but this is a big game for both teams. I'm talking from a national standpoint. I think A&M, I don't know if A&M might be rated in some people's polls. I think Miami's on the outside looking in right now, but this is a pretty big game. It really, truly is for week 2. So I want to hear your thoughts, though, on A&M. I know you're the SEC homer. You're going to tell me where, A&M might, win by 40. I don't know. They looked pretty good last week.
A&M did look really good last week. I mean, Connor Weigman in this new look Bobby Petrino-led offense, I mean, he looked pretty good, right? And I don't like Bobby Petrino for what he did with my Falcons, but I digress. He led him to a 52-10 blowout win over New Mexico. And it's New Mexico, right? That's the hard part about week 1. You don't know what really means what in some of these games. But he became the first Aggies player in history to throw 5 touchdown passes in a season opener, Chris. Yeah. So my big question mark as far as Weigman's concerned is, and I think this is what's on everybody's mind, can he replicate even half of that against Miami? Because if he can put up, 3 touchdowns possibly, right? 2, maybe 3 passing touchdowns, played relatively clean football, you got to think they can probably run another couple in and be in this game, I would like to think. I mean, Texas A&M, and you touched on it, Chris, under Jimbo Fisher's had some pretty damn good defenses.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be continuing this year. Last year, they weren't bad on defense. It just was they didn't have any offense to kind of go along with it. Here's the way I look at it. I think that offense does take the step forward, from last year, and I think they're going to be able to score against Miami. I think it's going to be a closer game than, like you said, that a lot of people are probably predicting. I don't think it's going to be a blowout on either side. But Texas A&M, and the better question is, they might be a sleeper team, right? That in the SEC West this year is that we need to keep an eye on, right? I mean, they've got that potential, especially if quarterback play in the offense, clicks all year long. I mean, they could come for the West, and they could just maybe be an outside looking in playoff spot there, Chris.
Boy, that's a bold take there.
That's a bold take, but
that's a bold take.
What's your final? Damn right, son. What's your final score predictions for this one?
Christian, I agree with about 85% of what you said in this game. I said, A&M is a 4.5 favorite in this game at Miami. Miami. The turnover chain, all of that. And Miami only held Miami to Ohio to 3 points, which was pretty impressive. Even against a Miami of Ohio team, they look good. But I think A&M it's pretty much do or die time for A&M and Jimbo Fisher this year. I truly believe that. I think Connor Weigman's a hell of a quarterback. I didn't need to see him blow up last week to know that. Give me A&M 34, Miami 21. I think it's close, but I think A&M just blows the doors off them in the second half. And I don't know why I'm even really saying that, Christian. It's not, we don't have a lot to go off of. I just think A&M's defense is really good. They had that number one recruiting class year. They got a lot of those guys still around. I know Jimbo's a good coach. You can't say that he's not. He won a national title, a few years. It's been more than a few years now, but their defense has kept them around. If their offense last year, if it could keep up with their defense, they would have easily made a bowl game last year instead of going 5-7. I do know that in an SEC conference.
Yeah, and I'll probably change my mind on this. I'm not going to change who I've got picked here. I've got A&M winning this one 35-31. But the more I think about it, though, if I'm not mistaken, the final score of that game was against Miami of Ohio was what, 30-30 or
38-3.
38-3,
like that, I think.
So, maybe my question is, what are they going to do against Texas A&M's defense? I guess that's kind of I might downgrade that. I think Texas A&M probably betting them to put 30 up on this one might be pretty good. Can Miami kind of keep pace with that? I don't know. They put 38 up, and that's what makes college football so dangerous is if Miami only put up 38 points against a Miami of Ohio, how many points can they put up against one of the best, one of the better defenses in college football?
Right, and that's the thing. In Miami, to me, what I saw in that game, they run a shit ton of running backs, which is great. Every team wants that opportunity and option to do so. They can do that. But A&M, the strength of their defense is their run game. I mean, it's tough with them up front. So that's why I see this a 34-21. Maybe it's a 28-17 game. I just think A&M is much more superior than Miami is on defense, and that's nothing against Miami this year. I want Miami to be good. It's good for college football. I just think A&M, this is kind of their – I have a feeling this year A&M was one of the toughest teams, Chris, we talk about it, to judge. You know what I mean? This offseason. Like record-wise, ranking-wise. They have an opportunity this year to really do something. And I'm gonna hop on that bandwagon. I'm gonna be that guy toting around Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher this year, which is hard for me to say.
Nothing wrong with that, son. This next one here is one that kind of plays kind of close to home for us, though.
Oh boy.
And that is Iowa versus Iowa State. What are your thoughts on that one, Chris?
The Iowa man, which I like to, bag on a lot. I got friends, family.
Hold on 1 second here.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Iowa versus Iowa State preview, Chris. What are your
thoughts
on that?
You had Clemson up there.
Clemson on there. I was still celebrating that Clemson downfall, son. Sorry about that.
No, you're good, man. Iowa coming into this game, 4-point favorite. This game, if anybody's watched this over the years, it's always close. It doesn't matter if one team is more superior than the other. This game always comes down to like double overtime or a field goal. Those two schools absolutely hate each other. You can laugh me off the internet all you want, but I'm close to Iowa. It's a pretty big rivalry. Cade McNamara looked good, Christian. He did. He looked good enough for what they've had last year, and I'm not even going to get into how bad Iowa's offense. That was pretty much the joke of the internet last year in college football, how bad it was at Iowa on offense last year. He was 17 of 30, 191 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was a transfer from Michigan last year. Look good. He did. I caught a little bit of the game. He looked all right. Caleb Johnson, to me, is a big-time running back to have. Didn't have a great game. He had 19 carries, 63 yards, a touchdown. Iowa loves to pound the football. They're known for putting offensive linemen and goddamn tight ends in the NFL, especially also their defense. So Iowa's going to play a smash mouth style of football similar to a Minnesota, Michigan type of brand. That's just what they do. A little weird stat here, though, against Utah State, Christian. Utah State outgained Iowa 329 total yards to 284. Kind of a weird deal. Is Iowa's defense not what we kind of maybe thought they were? People in the offseason are telling me Iowa's going 9-3 this year. I have them pegged as a 6-6 team, maybe 7-5 at best. Just something to think about. Kind of a weird stat that I took from that game. To beat Iowa State, though, Iowa's going to need to obviously be able to move the sticks. Cade McNamara is going to have to play a little bit better. He played good, as I said, but I mean, what we're comparing him, to previous years isn't to say much. I don't know, man. This game is kind of, like I said, I've watched this game a lot just because it's close to home. I got people in the family that are on both sides of this one, so I want to hear your thoughts, though, Christian. Maybe make a case for the Iowa State man.
I think this game needs a new name to it, right? I mean, is there a name that the rivalry even has? They've got. There has to be.
Don't they? Don't they play?
I'm going to call this the Caesar Sports Bettors Bowl, Chris, between both these programs, right? I mean, listen, Iowa State beat UNI, right? The University of Northern Iowa, which is not even a major program, 30-9. 30-9.
Okay. Yeah.
That's. To me, that's worse than what we just talked about with Miami beating Miami of Ohio 38-3. So, but here's the thing. Quarterback Rocco Beck, he was effective, right, in the game. He went 10 of 13, 113 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had a rushing touchdown in the game. But how's that going to translate to Iowa's defense? I mean, we touched on it. I mean, yeah, Iowa's defense, they may not be as elite as they've been in years past this year, but I don't think Iowa State's offense is necessarily going to be as elite as they've been in years past either. So that's kind of a hard thing to really predict. I mean, the biggest question mark is I have Iowa State's defense, I think they're going to be good this year. Again, I mean, that's the thing I keep hearing is they're really, really good, Iowa State's defense. And I mean, they looked pretty good in that game, but how does that really work with Cade McNamara back there? I mean, I do think McNamara and that offense have taken steps forward, right? But can Iowa State put pressure, on McNamara and keep touchdowns off the board? That's my biggest question. Can they keep him from moving the ball down the field on him? Because that's all they got to do. Just keep moving the ball, get in rhythm, and this would be a big game for them. Iowa State, Chris, we know it. Always a close game. And Matt Campbell was a very sought-after coach in the offseason, in the coaching carousel. But he decided to come back, which is huge, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's huge when you can keep a coach like that in-house. We have no idea, by the way, going into this game, really whether Iowa State's offense can do enough to hang or by how much Iowa's offense has gotten better, right? So it's really hard to kind of predict this one way or another. And I mean, again, we touched on defense. I mean, with all the departures and suspensions, how's that going to hold up throughout the course of this game? I'll give you my final score prediction on it, Chris. I've got Iowa 21, Iowa State 14.
Oh, we were close, but we're close. I mean, Children of the Corn said it here.
Yeah,
20-17. It's going to be a low-scoring game, guys. I think the over-under is literally a 39. Give me, though, the Cyclones 19-16 in a field goal fest. Ain't going to be pretty. Give me the Cyclones to knock off the Hawkeyes in an ugly game, a defensive battle. If you love defense, this is one to watch. I'm calling it right now. Right now. Christian, that's where I'm at with this game. You're right, though, about everything you just said there. Really don't know much about these teams, just as far as what they're trying to do. Is Iowa State's offense actually that good? We know Iowa State's defense is supposed to be good. Iowa always puts out good defenses. Didn't look elite last week against the Utah State team. That wasn't – I don't think anybody's high on them, really. Yeah, kind of something's got to give here. You know what I mean? Like, something's going to happen in this game. And give me the goddamn Cyclones, baby. Give me the Cyclones at home.
I love it, Chris. Moving on here, Texas versus Bama. The probably what might end up being one of the best games this weekend, I think.
Yeah, it could be one of these games of the year. You know, a game that we're going to look back on, just like the LSU Florida State. There's so many playoff implications, conference implications on a game like this, Christian.
Chris, what's your take though on Bama?
Oh boy, here I am for the old Bama man here. Is Jalen Milroe the real deal? He looked great. I've been seeing it all over the internet. Not only is he a bodybuilder, the guy I think he threw 3 touchdowns, rushed for 2, only quarterback to do that in Bama history. He looked great. He did. He looked really good. I know I've been harping on the quarterbacks all goddamn offseason, right? I'll be the first to admit it. But who gives a shit? It was Middle Tennessee State. I'm sorry. That's what Bama should have done, and that's what they did. We're going to find out what Bama really is after this game. We're going to find out what Texas obviously is, really made of too. The only problem I had in this game, though, how come Jalen Milroe is your leading rusher with 48 yards if you're Alabama? You don't have a Jahmyr Gibbs? No, he gone. You don't have like a Mark Ingram? Oh, no, he gone. You ain't got Brian Robinson Jr.? No, he gone too. Kind of surprising that he's your leading rusher with 48 yards against a Middle Tennessee State team. Now, Bama man, don't get mad at me. I know he's a stud. I know you guys have a bunch of good running backs, up-and-coming freshmen. I get that, but just caused a pause there a little bit from what I saw in that game. And I didn't watch much of it. I caught some highlights, to be honest with you. But Bama, I figured, is going to do what Bama should do in that game, and they did that. Defensively, Christian, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think they won that game, 48-7 or something, 56. I mean, they did what they were supposed to do. Not much to take away defensively for Bama. I have some question marks about their defense this year. I think we're going to find out a lot here against Texas when we know what Quinn Ewers can do and Steve Sarkisian in that offense. So I'm going to kick it over to you. You're going to give me the Texas side here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, looking at this game, because, the same thing with Texas, and they played Rice, and, it was really not a close game. I mean, Texas, they did what they were supposed to do as well. If Quinn Ewers wasn't injured last year, in the first quarter of that Bama game, Texas beats Bama. Yeah, you're not going to change my mind on that. I mean, they almost beat them with a quarterback that was hobbling around the damn field for 3 quarters. So, I personally believe, Chris, in this, that Texas, from an experience standpoint, just having guys that have played a lot of football, I don't know so much about talent. I mean, Alabama's obviously a really talented team, but Texas, let's not forget, they got some talent coming in too.
Texas recruits well.
I mean,
yeah,
it's one of those things, especially when you look at what Bama lost as far as wide receivers and what Bama lost as far as running backs last year and quarterbacks. It's a little different. I know Texas lost Bijan Robinson, but look at what they gained, especially in that wide receiver room. I mean, that's a huge upgrade for them.
Oh, yeah.
So you obviously know how I feel about having experience at the quarterback position.
Absolutely.
That is such a huge thing. And Texas has got it. And Bama kind of has it. I mean, they got a guy that started a couple games last year for him, played in a couple games, but he's probably not one that he's one that there's a big question mark there with Jalen Milroe, obviously. Look, I think the Longhorns defense is going to be much better this year, and it should be interesting to see, how does that match up against Milroe, and the Tide? I mean, can they bottle up that run game and force somebody to beat them throwing the ball on that Bama side? That to me is going to be very interesting. On the flip side of that, for Bama, some injuries have been kind of discussed in their secondary, right? Yeah. And I mean, if they're injured, we saw that the LSU Florida State game, right? Those big, strong, fast receivers of Florida State lit up LSU. If Bama's secondary's hurt and they got to play some young guns out there, look for Texas to feast on them. I mean, Chris, I'll kind of give you my final score prediction right off the rip. Give me Texas 31, Bama 24.
Whoa, we agree and damn near on the score, man. I'm gonna say I'm a man of my word. We've been talking about it all offseason. If you guys follow us, we think Texas is going to be Bama this year. I'm not changing my tune here. Christian's exactly right. I have the same questions at QB that Christian does here, guys. I got Texas in a close one, potentially overtime game, 34-31. Let's go. Texas Longhorns in Alabama. I got it, man. I'm taking Quinn Ewers. I'm taking the Steve Sarkisian hype, Christian.
And I love it, dude. That's what you got to do here, right? I mean, and this could be a very interesting week of college football, dude. This could be a great week. Little Oregon versus Texas Tech preview here, Chris. What do you were very high on Texas Tech coming into this year.
You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm not even trying to troll you over there. But I know you had this circled, if I remember right, as one of your trap games.
Yeah. Well, I lost $500 on this game. Not this game, but Texas Tech in particular. I'm pretty fucking pissed off about it, to be honest. Tech is a 6.5 point dog, which is actually kind of surprising the way they shit the bed against Wyoming last week. They were up 17-0 in that game, or excuse me, 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. Tech was. You let Wyoming hang around. And I'm not saying Wyoming is a complete trash team. That's not what I'm saying. But you get beaten double overtime, fuck around, and get beat by a couple points. Tech right now, I was very high on. I had them as a dark horse Big 12 contender this year. I clearly was wrong. They look like dog shit, especially on defense. Tyler Schlau, who is obviously, if anybody doesn't know, he's an Oregon transfer. He played QB there. Kind of ironic he's going against his old team. Was 90% of your goddamn offense. They couldn't run the ball. He was 31 of 47 for 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Not a bad game. But he also had 36 yards rushing, which pretty much led to running backs. That's a problem if you're Tech against a Wyoming team at Wyoming. Defense is also going to have to get better here. We know what Oregon brings to the table offensively. Bo Nix, I don't need to talk about him. He's been around college football for at least 100 years. We watched him at Auburn. Christian knows what I'm talking about. Also, the penalties. You look like Nebraska, 7 penalties for well over 70 yards. It's not going to get it done either. If you're Tech, if you're going to come into this game at home against an Oregon team who we know is very, very good. I think they're well coached. They got to clean up the mistakes if they want even a chance in this game personally against an Oregon team. Christian, I'll kick it back over to you, buddy.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, Oregon beat the shit out of Portland State. It was 81-7. Let me just say this.
Who's Portland State again?
They're an FCS school. And they look like it. So they don't even play this level. I mean, let's just be real there. Bo Nix in the passing game going to be even better this year, taking it to a whole nother level. I got a feeling, Chris. Bucky Irvin, I'm going to give you a stat line. I don't know if you're ready for it, Chris.
All right, what do you got?
At 119 yards and 2 touchdowns on 4 carries.
Say that again.
119 yards and 2 touchdowns on 4 carries.
It's like 35 yards a carry. Jesus.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah, that's impressive. Against Portland State, which is like playing me, you, and 9 other randoms.
I think they'd have had a better shot, if we were playing out there, man. Maybe even reffing. I don't know.
Yeah.
The defense to me, Chris, I know it was, obviously we'll talk about this here in a second, but the defense to me might be one of the best in the Pac-12, if not the country, dude. I mean, this year, Dan Lanning, second-year coach, defensive-minded guy, mastermind probably to, the first Georgia, national championship, I would say, on the defensive side of the ball. Was that coordinator for that, one of the best defenses of all time, or whatever you want to call it, in 21 Georgia.
Yep. Not
trying to start that argument again, but let's be honest, Chris. I mean, they did exactly what they should have done against the FCS school. So we're going to have to see what they do against a motivated Texas Tech team this week. What's your final?
So.
I mean, yeah, dude. I mean,
you have to be right.
Right.
You can't go off 0-2 if you're Tech, and high implications this year.
Well, I almost wonder if, this is what I almost wonder if you're Tech is, were they reading some of their own press clippings? Didn't they kind of get just caught, you know what I mean, by Wyoming, and they just got surprised?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. It was a very sloppy game, and it's like, could Tech come in here and still, I mean, that would be the most Texas Tech thing to do, right?
Right. But you know what, Christian, not this year, not so fast, my friend. Here's my prediction. You asked for it. I'm very big on Oregon this year. I mean, I'm not even. I don't care who they played last week. It didn't matter to me. If this was their first game of the season, give me Oregon 49-27 in a shootout for about the first half. I think Tech is going to have to throw the ball like almost every down. I don't think they can run the ball from what I saw. I watched that Wyoming game, by the way. I was texting you during that game. I said Tech has zero offense out of throwing the ball on hitch routes, and they didn't. They hung around, but that was against Wyoming. We know Oregon's defense is better. The only reason why I got Tech scoring 27 is because they're going to have to be able to score some points at some point. I don't think they have an answer for Oregon's offense. I don't. Bo Nix is a well-oiled machine. Dan Lanning's a hell of a coach. Give me Oregon 49-27 in this game. Bank it.
Man, well, we might disagree. We might disagree on that.
Don't tell me Tech's winning this game.
Well, I'm not going to tell you that, but what I will tell you is I don't think Tech scores 27 points in this game.
Okay.
I got Tech 14, Oregon 45 here. So Oregon 45, Tech 14.
Okay. I mean, still an ass whooping either way you look at it. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
I just think, like I said, I mean, it still gave up 7 points to an FCS school.
Yeah.
Come on, Dan.
Good take. Good take.
Well, if speaking of Dan, we got Wisconsin versus Washington State, the preview. And I'll start us off here, Chris, talking about the Wisconsin Badgers. Look, they're going to travel to a very tough venue to play Washington State.
Let's go.
Say what you will. I know, hey.
Martin Stadium, baby. Let's go.
I know the old swashbuckler himself, isn't kind of, Mike Leach isn't roaming those sidelines around anymore, but still
left his imprint, though.
He did. I mean, he definitely did. I mean, listen, I said this coming into the year. This is the prove it game to me right here where I get proven wrong by Wisconsin. I just know it is because it's coming. Wisconsin's passing was a little suspect against Buffalo, Chris. I mean, Tanner Mordecai finished the game going 24-31, 189 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He had a 36.0 QBR against Buffalo. The rushing attack looked good. I'm not going to sit here and play with you on that. The rushing attack looked really good, right? They had over 340 yards rushing.
And it should have, let's be honest.
Yeah, they absolutely should have. I mean, and they're gonna try to continue to lean on that. I think that's going to be their identity as they try to get Mordecai kind of settled into this offense. Defense also for Wisconsin looked a little different, as well. They let Buffalo drive on them and score. So, I mean, and not like score as the game was ending. Like the halftime score was really shocking to me, right? It was a one-possession game, and they were letting Buffalo kind of drive the ball down on there. Now, they tightened up at the end, but that's not the kind of defense that Wisconsin fans are used to. That's not that Big Ten, like one of the best defenses in the Big Ten and in the country, Wisconsin defense that you normally see. So it's interesting to me, right? I think it could potentially be a trap game waiting to happen for Luke Fickell and the Badgers. Potentially. But Chris, I'll kick it back to you. What do you know about Washington State?
I know a little bit. I know, Cameron Ward's not a bad quarterback back there. I mean, like you talked about Mike Leach. He kind of left his remnants there. You know what I mean? He's got, they want to sling the ball, throw it every goddamn play they can as quick as they can. He was 37-49, Christian, 451 yards, 3 touchdowns against a piss poor Colorado State team. I don't even need to bring that up again. We know how bad Colorado State is. But he looked good. They did what they were supposed to do, right? In a win, 50-24. Here, though, I have a little bit of a question. They gave up 24 to Colorado State. They gave up 21 in the fourth quarter of that game. Now, I didn't see the game. I don't know. It's 3 touchdowns in 1 quarter. It's hard to do regardless, whatever side of the ball you're on, whether you score 3 or give up 3. Kind of tough to gauge Washington State's defense right now. Here's the thing. with me coming into this Wisconsin game. And you're right. Mordecai looked like shit. I would say he looked like crap, personally. I really would. But they did get done what they needed to get done against a Buffalo team. Can they score against Wisconsin, who's always, in my lifetime, has had a great elite defense? I don't know. I know I've been on Wisconsin this year. I have them going 10-2. I know I'm big on them. I know me and you have had some debates about Wisconsin this offseason, some heated debates. But I think that this game, they're going to have to travel. I'm going to throw that in there, and I'm going to lean a little bit more on the Washington State side here and help my team out a little bit in Washington State that I had to cover tonight. Christian, I want to know your prediction right now. I want to see where you got this score, because I know you're going to harp on Wisconsin here. Are you picking Washington State to beat Wisconsin?
Me?
Yeah, you, the crazy fucker that took Duke over Clemson.
Little old me. Give me Washington State.
Woo!
28. Wisconsin 24.
Wow. Look at that. That is what you call going out on a limb right there.
Only because I think that Ward and Washington State offense, I think they're going to be better. I think they're better than Buffalo. I mean, I think they're a better team than Buffalo. Okay. And what are your thoughts, Chris?
No, I love the fact that this is what's great about the show. We take a take, we stand with it. You don't see a lot of channels do this. Trust me. You got to take some bold takes. The 10 or 9 or 10 teams we're covering tonight, there's going to be a couple upsets. It happens. I'm going to take Wisconsin strictly because, one, I'm high on Wisconsin. I'm going to throw the Buffalo game out the window and hope to God I'm right. Give me Wisconsin, though, in a close one. 31-21, but it's ugly. I think this is a close game through 3 quarters. I think Wisconsin can run the football against Washington State. That's the only reason why. It's not because Tanner Mordecai goes off and, throws for 300 yards and 75%, percent completion percentage and a couple TDs. I don't think that happens. I actually think that Wisconsin and Luke Fickell, who I think is obviously the better coach, I think they barely get it done, Christian, but it's not pretty. It's a little scary out there in Martin Stadium this weekend.
Man,
Wisconsin.
Well, I know Dan the Man thinks, obviously for Dan the Man's sake, I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope you're right there, Chris. Last game here, Chris. This was one we kind of went back and forth. We debated it. You kind of told me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, we got to take a look at this one."
Touch on it.
Auburn versus Cal. Chris, what's going on with Auburn? We kind of pissed the Auburn man off to start the year in the offseason, but I mean, what are you thinking right now over there, Chris? What are you thinking?
They did what they needed to do this week against UMass, who's already played now 2 games. But UMass is trash. They did beat New Mexico State. I don't even know where that's located other than New Mexico. It was 59-14, Christian. Auburn's an SEC school. I know they want to run the football. I've watched so much Auburn football in my lifetime. That's what they're going to do, even under Hugh Freeze in his first year. Hard to gauge with Peyton Thorne, the Michigan State transfer, who I've watched a ton of my time in the Big Ten. He was 10-17. He played, threw I think 140 yards and a touchdown. They pulled him pretty early, which they should have. I mean, it's New Mexico, or excuse me, it's UMass. Auburn, though, did what I thought they were going to do. They ran the ball for over 300 yards. I think that's what Auburn wants to do this year. They're a physical style football team. They always have been. But a little bit of a weird deal there. They gave up over 301 yards defensively in that game. And that's overall, and I know that doesn't mean a lot, but UMass looked like shit the week before against New Mexico State, and they beat them. It's just one of those kind of weird deals. I'm kind of wondering about Auburn's defense maybe a little bit, Christian. Wasn't overly impressed with the defense in that game. But you got to go play Cal. You got to travel across the globe to go play him here. I know Cal put up some points and some numbers. I'll let you lead into that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this about Cal. Their starting quarterback, Sam Jackson, was hurt early in the first half versus North Texas and gave way to Ben Finley. He had 279 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But this is a stat depending on who you're looking at. He has 75.7 QBR and led Cal to a 58-21 victory. Yeah. Chris. Here's the thing, dude. I mean, Cal running back Jaden Ott had, he ran for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their backup running back also had 3 rushing touchdowns in this game. At one point, it was 27-21 against North Texas, and that was in the second quarter, and they ultimately pulled away to kind of do that. The biggest question that I have, Chris, can Cal compete and hang around with Auburn? It's the biggest question I've got. Yeah. But I do have a stat for you here, by the way. Actually, it's not really so much a stat. It's just a fact. And that was the last time an SEC school traveled to Cal was in 2017, in which Ole Miss lost to Cal 27-16.
Let's go. You want to hear my prediction here?
Yeah, let's go. What's your prediction?
Give me Cal 31-30 over Auburn. I'm going, baby. I'm riding the Cal train. I don't know shit about them, but I know a lot about Auburn. They've hated me all offseason. This isn't even buy into my segment here. Give me Cal in a close game. And it's one of those weird games, Christian. It's back and forth, comes down to the wire. Give me Cal with that high octane, throw the ball, sling it around, 700 yards of total offense. They're not going to do that against Auburn. Auburn's defense is better than that. But I got some questions about their defense. Give me Cal in this game, 31-30.
My final score prediction for it is Auburn 38, Cal 21. Ooh. I can't, it's too many. I can't always take every underdog here.
You made your bold statement in the segment before, so yeah. I got to do it, though. I got to do it to you finally, man. I got to give the Pac-12, baby, is 13-0 right now, guys. Number 1 conference in America. Write it down after week 1.
Jeez.
Think about that for a second, SEC, man.
Well, it just sucks. I mean, honestly, I'll say this, Chris. I'll let you take your little break there real quick. But, I'll say this. The surprising thing to me is, and by the way, chat, let us know. Do you think, let's just say timing is everything, especially with all this conference realignment, everything like that kind of happening, that if the Pac-12, let's say nobody coming into this year would have jumped ship and left the Pac-12, do you think after what the Pac-12 could potentially do this year and be really, really good, could they maybe have survived? Would they have been able to negotiate and figure some things out and kind of keep the Pac-12 together? I personally think all it would have taken is you get a year where you got some teams that kind of, you have an off year in the rest of the Power 5, Pac-12 kind of comes up, they keep doing what they need to do. Obviously, somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose in that conference every week, week in, week out. I'd like to think that possibly they could have stayed together. It's kind of hard to predict it. I mean, you would have to have somebody like a USC or something like that probably win a national championship before all this. It doesn't matter, though. They obviously are disbanding. But that's kind of my whole side of it there.
All right. What did you say there? I had to drop the headphones. I apologize.
Oh, you're good. I was touching on how, my thing is timing is everything with this, Chris. And I kind of felt as if, the Pac-12, the success they've had thus far, the future that looks like a lot of the teams that are in the Pac-12 have, I mean, it's pretty bright. And my big question is, if let's say going into this year, nobody had jumped ship yet, right? Pac-12 realignment, and disbandment, however you want to word that, wasn't a thing. And somebody, and you maybe had 2 Pac-12 teams make it to a playoff game or, something crazy like that, or USC goes out and wins the national championship. Do you think that would have been enough for to keep the Pac-12 together?
Yeah, I you know what? I don't know. It's funny you brought that up because I was just thinking this, like, it's amazing to me that the Pac-12 obviously has shown that they just don't give a fuck about sports, clearly, enough to keep the conference and get TV deals and make some of these teams money. I heard something the other day that Vanderbilt and schools like that in the SEC and A&M and all these other schools make like almost double of what like an Oregon does, or not Oregon, but like a Washington, a Utah does. And that's sad. And nothing against Vanderbilt and Mississippi State and teams like that, but because of the TV deal, right? And it's Pac-12 just doesn't give a fuck, and they've abandoned football. And it's ironic, Christian, that the Pac-12 here is 13-0 in week 0 and week 1 and looking like the best team in America. And they got 5 or 6 teams that are really, really, really good. And they're going to end this year with 5 or 6 teams, maybe rated in the top 25, possibly. God, could you imagine if Pac-12 got 2 schools in the playoff? It's rare for that to ever happen. Anyone in a 14 playoff doesn't happen often. But I mean, you imagine, and that's how they ended. That's how they disbanded. Just that's it. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you're definitely not wrong. I mean, and you look at it. I mean, across all of college football. I mean, whereas, like I said, I mean, Georgia might lose 2 games this year. They could lose 1 throughout the regular season, and they could lose the SEC championship. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying it could happen, right? Bama looks beatable this year. We don't know enough about Texas A&M. LSU still has a long road to go, but they already have a loss. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. Clemson got clipped early in that. UNC against probably what's not going to be a very good South Carolina team, a very up and down South Carolina team. They kind of pulled one out there, and they kind of dominated them and kind of limited them. But that's my big question is college football is very funny in that way, right? Where the Pac-12, it would almost be ironic if this year the Pac-12 got 2 teams into the college football playoff.
God, you mentioned like a USC or Oregon or something like that, or
it's like a Utah, like Cam Rising comes back and just
Utah
lights them up. Dude, that would be to me, and that would be ironic almost. It'd be poetic to sort of send the Pac-12 off in that way.
Yeah, and it's sad. I know maybe not a lot of people agree, but like I'm a big component of having multiple conferences. I don't like this, 4-team, or 4 conferences. It's going to ultimately end up being 2 big power conferences. I don't like that, like the NFL's got. I mean, they have their sub conferences, but I like the fact that Pac-12 has been around since I've been alive. You know what I mean? They put some teams out there. USC in the early 2000s were great. Oregon had a really good year against, Auburn and Cam Newton. I mean, they put some teams out there. I like the Pac-12. I love the late West Coast game, on at like 11 o'clock at night when you get home from the bar, Christian. You know what I mean? You get to watch, USC or Oregon play or somebody like that. Yeah, it just kind of sucks now, man. It's like I can't believe USC and UCLA are now in the Big Ten. I just next year it's just weird to me, man.
It's very, very weird. Very weird year, Chris, but we're excited to be back with you guys again this weekend. We're going to be calling the Nebraska-Colorado game and then the Texas-Bama game. Double header, son. I mean, that's got to be fun.
It's going to be fun.
So we'll jump back live, I believe, about 10:40 again on Saturday morning to call the Nebraska-Colorado game. Be there or be square. Chris, anything to wrap us up with?
No, like I said, if you guys watch, I know it's kind of a slow night tonight, but I appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't, like, comment, subscribe. It helps the channel out tremendously, guys. We're putting a lot of work into this. Like I said, I appreciate everybody that's on board and feel free to drop your comments in too. Like I said, one good thing about our channel, Christian, we will admit when we're wrong. We take some bold takes like we did tonight, and it's a lot of fun, man. So we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys here in a couple days, right around the corner, baby. Let's go.